The letter lay unfinished on the desk, the edges of the paper worn from years of handling, reading, and rewriting. Elizabeth had started it many times, but every time she tried to find the right words, the weight of what she had done seemed too heavy to put into sentences. Now, as she sat in the dimly lit room, the same room where she had raised her son, Ben, she knew this might be her last chance to get it right. She could hear the echo of her own voice from years ago, the sound of Ben's laughter as a boy, the clatter of breakfast plates and the mundane but precious moments of their life together. Those memories were tinged with guilt now, a guilt she had carried for far too long. Ben had grown up believing a lie, one she had carefully woven, thinking it was for the best. And though she had convinced herself at the time that hiding the truth was an act of love, she had come to realize it was one of betrayal. The secret had always been there, lurking just beneath the surface. Elizabeth had never imagined that it would stay hidden forever, but she hadn't been prepared for the consequences when the truth finally came to light. She hadn't anticipated the devastation on Ben's face when he learned the truth. A truth that she should have told him years ago, when he was young, when there was still time for him to process it without feeling betrayed. Ben had always known something was different about his father. He had asked questions as a child, innocent questions about why his father wasn't around, why there were no pictures of him, no stories shared about him at the dinner table. Elizabeth had answered those questions with vague reassurances, telling him that his father had left before he was born, that he had never been part of their lives. It was easier that way, easier than explaining the real story. But the truth was much more complicated. Ben's father hadn't left by choice. He had been taken from them, a victim of an accident that Elizabeth had witnessed herself. She had been there, helpless to stop it, and in her grief, she had made the decision to never tell Ben. She had convinced herself that keeping the truth hidden would protect him from the pain, that he didn't need to know about the father who had never had the chance to meet him. She had wanted to shield Ben from the reality of loss, from the weight of growing up knowing that his father had died tragically before his birth. So, Elizabeth had kept the secret, buried deep in her heart, hoping that it would stay there forever. But secrets have a way of surfacing, especially the ones we try hardest to hide. Ben had discovered the truth when he was in his 20s, long after Elizabeth had convinced herself that the lie had become his reality. He had found an old letter, tucked away in a box of forgotten belongings, a letter from his father to Elizabeth, written just days before the accident. The letter had been full of hope and excitement for the future, for the family they were about to become. It was a letter that shattered the carefully constructed illusion Elizabeth had built around Ben's life. When Ben confronted her, his voice full of confusion and hurt, Elizabeth had seen the walls between them crumble. He had looked at her with the kind of pain she had tried so hard to prevent, and in that moment, she knew there was no going back. The bond they had shared, the trust she had thought would last a lifetime, had been broken. He had left after that, needing space to process the truth, needing time to decide if he could forgive her. Months had passed, and though they had spoken briefly since, their relationship had never been the same. The warmth, the closeness, the deep connection that had defined their relationship for so many years had been replaced by distance, by silence. And now, as Elizabeth sat at the desk, the letter before her, she knew that this might be her only chance to explain herself, to offer the apology she had been too afraid to give in person. She picked up the pen, her hand trembling as she began to write. My dearest Ben, I have written and rewritten this letter so many times that I've lost count, but I always struggle to find the right words. Maybe there are no right words for this. Maybe there is no way to truly express how sorry I am for what I've done. But I need to try. I need you to know that when I made the decision to hide the truth about your father, I thought I was doing it out of love. I thought I was protecting you from the kind of pain that I had carried for so long, the pain of losing him, the pain of living with the knowledge that he was taken from us before he ever had the chance to be a father to you. I didn't want you to grow up with that shadow over your life, so I built a different story, a story that I thought would give you a sense of security, of peace. But I realize now that I was wrong. By trying to protect you from the truth, I betrayed your trust. I made a decision that wasn't mine to make. You had the right to know who your father was, to know the truth about him and about what happened to him. I took that from you, and for that, I am deeply, deeply sorry. I wish I could go back and tell you everything when you were old enough to understand, when we could have faced it together. But instead, I kept it buried, and in doing so, I hurt you more than I ever intended. I see that now. I see the distance between us, and I know it's because of the choices I made. Choices that were meant to protect you but only ended up driving us apart. I know I cannot undo what has been done. I know that trust, once broken, is not easily mended. But I hope, with everything in me, that one day you can forgive me. Not just for the lie, but for the years we lost because of it. Your father loved you, Ben. He may not have been here to show it, but he loved you with everything he had. And I should have told you that. I should have shared that part of him with you instead of keeping it locked away, thinking I could spare you the pain. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I don't expect this letter to fix everything, but I wanted you to know the truth, from me, even if it's far too late. I hope, in time, you can see that the choices I made, though misguided, came from a place of love. I loved you then, and I love you now, more than you could ever know. With all my heart, Mom. Elizabeth set the pen down, her hand trembling as she folded the letter and slipped it into an envelope. She didn't know if Ben would ever read it. She didn't know if the words would reach him in time to make any difference. But she had to try. As she sealed the envelope and placed it in a drawer, she felt a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, at least on paper. And though it might not repair the damage she had caused, it was a step, perhaps the only step she could take, toward healing. For now, that would have to be enough.